What is going on, everyone? Welcome into Big Time Football Talk. Hope you guys enjoyed the first round of the NFL Draft. Man, that was exciting. I love the NFL Draft. So let's talk about the picks. Starting with number 1, Carolina Panthers. Big surprise taking Bryce Young, quarterback, Alabama. Houston Texans. After all the talk, all the chatter, all the rumors, they still ended up taking C.J. Stroud out of Ohio State. I just got to get to it before I talk about more of the picks in the first round. How about the Philadelphia Eagles, man? Recreating the 2021 defensive line at Georgia. Now you have Jordan Davis, Nolan Smith, and Jalen Carter, and now you've got you have a dominant, a potentially dominant defensive line and a very complimentary piece to what they have in the interior. Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, a guy that can, play defensive end and defensive tackle. You bring in Nolan Smith, a guy with bend, explosion, a guy that just gets after it, 4.39 speed. So Eagles trade up from 10 to 9 to get Jalen Carter, and then they also take Nolan Smith at 31. So really nice picks for the Philadelphia Eagles. Definitely winners of the first round. Seattle Seahawks also winners in the first round. Number 5, they took Devin Witherspoon, corner out of Illinois. My number 1 corner in this draft. I think most people's number 1 corner in this draft. I'd say at least probably, if you look at most of the national media, it's probably like 55-60% of media analysts had Witherspoon the number 1 corner. It looks like Seattle and most of the NFL viewed Witherspoon as the number 1 corner in this draft as well. So they take him at 5, then they get Jackson Smith at Jigba at 20. Really nice picks for the Seattle Seahawks at 5 and 20. Detroit Lions also had 2 picks in the first round. And these 2 picks, this is tough for me because as a Lions fan and as a fan of these 2 players that they took, I like Jahmyr Gibbs and I like Jack Campbell. These are just 2 picks that I felt like a stretch. And I got flashbacks of the old regime when they were stretching on picks. Tease Tabor in the second round. Jelani Tavai in the second round. Now Jahmyr Gibbs, a guy that most people thought would be there day 2. And look, the Lions' argument would be, if they really like Campbell, they really like Gibbs. If you really like a guy, go get him. And I'm a full believer in that. But to me, these picks were just picks where I was wanting more. I just, like the Eagles, everyone talks about as the winner of this draft. The Lions had a chance at 6 to take Jalen Carter, and they chose to trade out of it to 12. And then they had a chance to take Nolan Smith at 12. They had a chance to take him at 18. So now the Eagles talked about as the winner of this draft, and the Lions had a chance to take both of those guys. Jalen Carter, obviously there's the off-the-field stuff. There was question marks about his character, whether he's a good guy, whether he's a bad guy. But the Lions needed help at the defensive line. Linebacker still in need, though. So Jack Campbell, though, let's just talk about Jack Campbell, the player. Jack Campbell, excellent football player, reads plays very well. He's got the size you look for. Wish he played a little bit more recklessly and without hesitation, but he's a guy that you can tell his football intelligence is very high. You can tell he enjoys, being out there, being a linebacker, just getting after it. So, like you touched on, he's a humble guy. It seems like a humble, down-to-earth guy that's just going to get after it, and work. Same last name as Dan Campbell. I'm not sure if that had anything to do with them selecting him, but yeah, Jack Campbell, seems like a fit for what the Lions are going to do. It just, I don't think there's a huge upside as far for Jack Campbell, but can he be a solid to good starting linebacker in the NFL? Absolutely. So, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jack Campbell, picks I like, but I don't love, and we'll see how what the Lions can do with these 2 guys, and we'll see what they can do. They will have 3 second-round picks tomorrow. Another picks I love: Las Vegas Raiders, Tyree Wilson. Man, I love this pick for the Raiders. Jalen Carter obviously would have been a nice pick too, but now you have Tyree Wilson, you have Max Crosby, Chandler Jones. You're going to be able to get after quarterbacks, and you're going to be able to say even Tyree Wilson doesn't start, you rotate him with Crosby, and Chandler Jones. Keep those guys healthy, and the Raiders, this is a huge improvement to the Raiders' pass rush, and it's going to help their secondary. A lot of people thought the Raiders were going to take a corner safety to help out their secondary, but you know how you help out your secondary? You get guys like Tyree Wilson that can get after the quarterback. Atlanta Falcons, Bijan Robinson. This is where I thought Bijan was going to go, and that's exactly where he goes. Arthur Smith, Atlanta, team that loves to run the football. You had Bijan Robinson, a guy that knows a little thing or two about running the football, the best running back in this draft. Incredible change of direction, can make people miss. Seems like a good guy. Seems like a guy that's just is going to come in and work day one. So Atlanta, they take Bijan Robinson, a guy that was the Vegas favorite to go there, and that is the pick for the Atlanta Falcons. Talk about some more notable first-round picks. Yeah, I like the Titans getting Peter Skoronski. It was a pick that not only was Skoronski the best player on the board, it was a pick that made sense from a needs perspective for the Tennessee Titans. So that's where they choose to go there. Indianapolis Colts, we'll go back to the top. Number 4, they took Anthony Richardson. I love this for the Colts because the Colts, they almost were trying to – it seems like with Phillip Rivers and Matt Ryan, they're kind of just playing it too safe. Let's go sign a veteran. Maybe are they getting older? But – yeah, they're getting older, but they still, they're proven commodities. Is this a little swing for the fence, Anthony Richardson? But man, you got to love the upside and the athletic freak of nature that Anthony Richardson is, and the dynamic playmaking ability he can bring to the Indianapolis Colts offense is going to be fun. And Anthony Richardson, a fun watch, and I'm excited to see how he does next year in Indianapolis. So the Cardinals interested. They traded back and took Paris Johnson at pick 6. Paris Johnson, by most people, was the best offensive tackle in this draft. A guy that's played guard. He can play tackle. A good football player nonetheless. So I like this pick for Arizona. Chicago Bears, another one of my favorite picks. Big Darnell Wright from Tennessee. Darnell Wright, maybe the most powerful tackle in this draft. You talk about Justin Fields being your future quarterback, how you help your future quarterback. You go get a future superstar and offensive tackle in Big Darnell Wright from Tennessee. It's the guy that, well, they're either going to play him at left tackle, right tackle. He's going to excel at either one. New York Jets. At 13, there was a question whether they were going to get Aaron Rodgers some help or where they were going to go defense. They chose to go defense. Will McDonald, the edge rusher out of Iowa State. Will McDonald, a phenomenal player at Iowa State. This is a guy that was really not put in the most ideal situation at Iowa State, but a guy that just gets after it. Relentless pass rusher, excellent tackler, just terrific, relentless pursuit of ball carriers. I mean, an outstanding football player nonetheless. I like what Green Bay did getting Luke Van Ness, edge rusher from Iowa. This is one of my favorite players in this draft. When you talk about Luke Van Ness, you can't forget to mention power. That's the name of this guy's game. Excellent power rusher and a phenomenal football player. So I'll just try to touch on the ones that I haven't mentioned. Pittsburgh taking Broderick Jones, offensive tackle. Georgia, Washington Emmanuel Forbes, a quarter out of Mississippi State. New England Patriots, Christian Gonzalez. Gonzalez makes a lot of sense for New England. Older secondary. You bring in a guy, you've made some kind of picks that were stretches in the past. This is not a stretch here getting Christian Gonzalez. He probably was the best, arguably was the best player on the board at the time. Just a freak athlete, 4'3", 840, a guy that moves well, very good back pedal, opens his hips well. there's not a lot to really there's really no negatives of Christian Gonzalez's game. And as a guy that I was listening to Brett Coleman talk about, as a guy that really got better as this season went on. Los Angeles Chargers took Quentin Johnston. So you got Keenan Allen, you got Mike Williams. Those are guys that, like people touched on, not always healthy. So you bring in Quentin Johnston, a guy that, did have some injuries at TCU, but this is a guy that's a physical receiver, who can go up and get the ball, 40-inch vertical. He's got run after catch ability. He's got good speed. Just a great overall player and a consensus top 5, top 3 receiver. Maybe the number 1 receiver by some people in this draft. So a really nice pick for the Los Angeles Chargers. Tampa Bay, Kalijah Kancey. A lot of different directions the Tampa Bay Buccaneers could have went here. They went defensive line, big Kalijah Kancey out of Pitt. It's a guy that has serious pass rushing ability, quick twitch ability. It's a guy that holding his ground against his double teams is really not the strength of this guy's game. He's not a elite run defender, but can he get off the ball quickly? Can he get after quarterbacks? Yes and yes. So that's the pick for Tampa Bay. Kalijah Kancey, defensive tackle out of Pitt. Baltimore Ravens, Zay Flowers, Boston College. You bring in Odell Beckham. You got Rashad Bateman, too, at wide receiver. So you bring in Zay Flowers, who I think has some Antonio Brown traits, just his ability to get the ball, just get upfield, electric with the ball in his hands as far as making people miss. Excellent route runner, separates super well. It's a guy that he really gets it as far as, knowing how to play the wide receiver position. He can play the outside. He can play in the slot. It's a guy that, could you move him in the backfield and, run some swing passes to him? I guess the point I'm trying to make is there's a lot of ways you can use Zay Flowers, and you get another dynamic playmaker for Lamar Jackson. 23 Minnesota Vikings took Jordan Addison. Jordan Addison, not one of my favorite players in this draft, if you're being honest, but he's a solid receiver nonetheless. Has had a really nice career that started off at Pitt, ending up last year playing in LA for USC. He's a guy that knows how to really accelerate with the ball in his hands. I think he does. He has fairly good play speed, even though he didn't run the best time at 4.49. I think this is a guy that it could be a good complement to Justin Jefferson, kind of take some pressure off Jefferson and Hockenson. I think, teams are not going to be able to really just key in on Jefferson as much. The threat of Addison in the slot will kind of give, Jefferson some more one-on-one opportunities. So I think if you're thinking about it that way for the Minnesota Vikings, it kind of makes sense. But not a pick I love, but I think a guy that could do some nice things in this Minnesota offense and help them put up some points on the board. New York Giants, Deonte Banks, corner, Maryland. Pick that makes a lot of sense for the New York Giants. They need help at corner. Deonte Banks, excellent athlete. Whatever you want him to do, he'll do it. Man coverage, zone coverage. He's a guy that'll tackle. He'll compete. He's feisty. He's a guy that had a really nice career at the University of Maryland. There's really a lot to like about Deonte Banks' game. And, when the Giants moved up, I kind of had a feeling they were going to go there. A lot of people, I think it was Mel Kiper and Riddick, I think, called this pick. Pick that just made way too much sense for the Giants, because Giants have really cleared up a lot of holes on their team. The offensive line was much improved this year. They've invested a lot of assets in the first round of the draft the last couple of years in Andrew Thomas and Evan Neal last year. You got Kayvon Thibodeau. Your edge rushers improve. You got interior defensive line. Dexter Lawrence has really become a stud. So with the trenches improve, Saquon healthy, the receiver position still, could have improvement. Why not get an athlete to help out your secondary in Deonte Banks? 25 Buffalo Bills, get the best tight end, Dalton Kincaid, Utah. Kincaid started his career at San Diego, transferred to Utah. This is a guy that basically a receiver in basically a bigger wide receiver. This is a guy that knows how to run routes, knows how to get open, can win contested catches all over the field, especially in the end zone. This guy that looks the part and plays the part. Love Dalton Kincaid. Was a guy I watched in the summer initially. He's a guy I fell in love with at the tight end position. I knew he would be one of the top tight ends in this draft. Buffalo Bills take him at 25, and him and Josh Allen should be rocking and rolling next year. And I think he's a nice complementary piece to the receivers they have in Buffalo. Now you have Stephon Diggs, Gabriel Davis, and then Dalton Kincaid. You got really a three-headed threat in the receiving game for Buffalo. 26, Dallas Cowboys, Big Mazi Smith, defensive tackle out of Michigan. I watched Mazi Smith play a lot at the University of Michigan, being a fan of them. Mazi Smith, his name in the game is grown man strength, especially in the upper body. This guy that can win one-on-one, like a true zero technique. The Cowboys are going to use him to create a lot of disruption in the middle, kind of create more one-on-one pass rush opportunities for Parsons, and more one-on-one opportunities for DeMarcus Lawrence. And to also eat up space to keep the linebackers free. So it's a pick. Defensive tackle is a position that really made a lot of sense for the Dallas Cowboys. I've always respected, Jerry Jones is a guy that seems like when in doubt, there was doubt of, they could have went in a lot of different directions. When in doubt, build the trenches is what I always say. They take Mazi Smith, big D tackle, out of the University of Michigan. Jacksonville Jaguars, pick I love here, Big Anton Harrison, offensive tackle, Oklahoma. Harrison, in my opinion, one of the most underrated players in this draft. Former basketball player in high school, which I did not know, but makes a lot of sense. And you see the athleticism. This is a guy that maybe not the most aggressive, nasty offensive tackle, but to me, he's so smooth. And he's a guy that just wants to get the job done, seal the guy off, and get out of the way. Harrison does it all. Reach blocking at the second level, zone blocking, man blocking, can hold anchor and pass protection. There's really no weaknesses to Anton Harrison's game. He was a guy that purely preference, a lot of people just for pure preference liked other offensive tackles better than Anton Harrison, but this was a guy that I knew whoever drafted him was going to be happy, and that is a guy that as fans watch Anton Harrison, and when he finally comes to Jacksonville, we'll be happy with this pick long term. Obviously, it's not like the quote unquote sexy pick, if you will, but I think this is a pick that's going to help Trevor Lawrence. It's going to help this Jacksonville Jaguars offense, and I think it's an outstanding pick for the Jaguars. 28, Cincinnati Bengals take Myles Murphy. If you've watched my channel, I've given my opinion on Myles Murphy. I think he's a guy that there's definitely flashes where you really see his athleticism. Former 5-star out of high school, does have the tools to have the success of the National Football League level, but there's too many plays where he gets blocked by tight ends, he gets pushed back, his pass rush kind of stalls out, if you will. He just kind of gets stuck on the tackle. Just too many plays of that, but there is flashes where he can explode off the line of scrimmage. He can disrupt and make plays in the backfield. Look, this is a pick. Cincinnati kind of in a spot where a lot of needs are met. They've improved offensive line, linebacking core pretty solid. The secondary is okay. Receiving core good. Quarterback good. So when in doubt, build the trenches. Myles Murphy's the pick. A guy with some upside, and a guy that if the Cincinnati Bengals coaching staff really works with this guy, I think you can really see him take a next step in his game. New Orleans Saints, Big Brian Brzee, defensive tackle from Clemson. Pick that made too much sense for the New Orleans Saints. Defensive line aging, a roster where it's pretty solid, but it's not, there's not a lot of good to it. Why not get a freak defensive tackle like Brian Brzee, a guy that like Miles Murphy, there's a lot of traits for him to have success in the National Football League. Guy that just did not play a lot of football in college due to injuries and some other stuff that happened. But Bryan Bresee, a big physical defensive tackle who tested off the charts athletically, 6'5", just shy of 300 pounds. Bryan Bresee, I think he'll be a nice fit for the New Orleans Saints. Just a big interior presence, a guy that can also split out to like the 3-tech, 4 technique and rush the passer too. Like the pick, New Orleans getting Bryan Bresee. Philadelphia, like I touched on, Nolan Smith, edge rusher for Georgia. Rich getting richer here. Kansas City Chiefs, Felix Anudike Uzama. Not my favorite player, but the Chiefs, to me, I guess this pick makes sense in a way. You've done a good job of building the offensive line, building the defensive line, so you get a guy like Felix Anudike Uzama that can add some depth on the defensive line. You got Chris Jones. You took Carl Loftus last year, so you had a guy that, even if he's a rotational piece, can keep some fresh bodies on the defensive line, especially late in the season come playoff time. So don't love the pick, but it's not a bad pick nonetheless for the Kansas City Chiefs. So my takeaways, I thought Tyree Wilson was going to go 2, but the Texans still ended up taking C.J. Stroud at 2. A little bit of a surprise, just because the odds were all over the place. But C.J. Stroud is the pick, and he is a Houston Texan. They do trade up at 3 and get Will Anderson. Will Anderson, look, I'm not buying into the upside this guy has, but he's a rock-solid football player overall. Yes, he is. Is he going to come in and be a day-one starter and be a good culture fit, or be a guy that's going to be a good dude, a guy that'll set the tone as far as working hard and getting after it? Yes, he will be. So pretty good pick there at 3. I think the Texans gave up quite a bit to move back up to 3. But look, Will Anderson, this is a guy that you'll take the high floor with this guy, and a guy that just, barring multiple injuries or something, would be the only way this guy is a bust. Thanks for tuning in to Big Time Football Talk. Make sure to stay tuned for more episodes of clips from the show. Till next time, peace.